We have so many great NHL prospects out there. We're going to be ranking the top 25 best. Hello, guys, and welcome back. You heard it right. We're ranking the top 25 best prospects in the NHL right now that have been drafted by NHL teams. So no Connor Bedard or Adam Fantilli yet, but there's still so many superstars that have yet to hit the NHL stage that I want to talk about here today and rank. But does your favorite NHL team have a top 25 prospect? And who do I see as the best prospects right now in the NHL? Watch till the end for all of the complete rankings and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more prospect content just like this. Now let's start off today's list at number 25, and there was a few prospects that were really in consideration for this spot that just missed it. Players like Brendan Othmann, Sebastian Kosa, players like Fabian Liesel as well. But coming in at number 25, let's go on to the Toronto Maple Leafs best prospect in Matthew Knies, who's been tearing up with the University of Minnesota over these past couple of years. 20 years old, 6'3", 209 pounds, and looking like a steal at 57 overall. You can see what he's done in the NCAA. Last year was a point per game. This year in 35 games, has 21 goals, 19 assists, 40 points, has truly gotten to that next level. And even though I would say he's the weakest prospect out of that big top line in Minnesota, he still does a ton well, using his size in so many good ways, creating space and getting around opponents. He's going to be a great goal scorer at the next level, a solid power play guy, and overall just a pretty fantastic middle six forward. But next up, let's go into 24 and the Chicago Blackhawks top forward prospect in Frank Nazar, who was drafted 13th overall in 2022. And Nazar's season has been a complete derailment from what we expected. He had hip surgery extremely early on in the season, and of course, didn't play the start of the season for Michigan, didn't play in the World Juniors or anything, and was just gotten back these last couple of months, and in a lesser role since for Michigan. Most of their lines have already been set in those games. I think he's played pretty well in those limited minutes, getting 5 points in 9 games played. But he's the type of player that with the mobility he has is supreme, but that hip surgery will kind of get a little bit of taking used to get back to that great level that we saw last year in his draft year. But now let's go on to number 23 and one of the most exciting prospects on this list. Next up, let's go on to Noah Östlund of the Buffalo Sabres, who was drafted 16th overall in 2022 at 19 years old, 5'11", 163 pounds. This year he's been playing mostly in the Allsvenskan and the World Juniors. In the Allsvenskan, he got 8 goals, 18 assists, 26 points in 37 games so far. And in the World Juniors for Sweden, I thought he looked pretty great, and just the teammates around him weren't all really doing all too much, but he was a player, one of the few players for Sweden actually providing offensive sparks. He got 4 points in 7 games played, and I thought it looked pretty good there. But the dynamic play that he has, the way he's able to work off opponents, the way he's able to find space and able to make silky plays all over the ice, he's the type of player that can do anything for you offensively, and especially on a power play someday as a second line center, I think he'll be terrific. Now moving on to number 22, let's go on to another center prospect for the Buffalo Sabres. Next up, I have Yuri Coolidge. And even though I could see Yuri Coolidge not having as much potential as Noah Östlund, to me there is so much to like here that is already at a pro level. You can see he's still 18 years old, 6', 179 pounds. He was drafted 28th overall by the Sabres in 2022, but his season has been among the best in the entire 2022 draft after he was drafted. In the AHL, he's got 35 points, 17 goals in 48 games, was stellar and extremely clutch for the Czechs in the World Juniors, getting 7 goals, 9 points in 7 games played, just being terrific there. And although I love the floor and the base that Coolidge had with his decision-making and the way he processes the game, that skill level and that talent has started to really shine through, and the way he's able to use his shot and create space for himself has just kept getting better throughout the year. Now let's advance on to number 21 and go on to another Blackhawks prospect here. Next up, I got Kevin Korchinski on the back end. At 18 years old, he was drafted 7th overall by the Blackhawks and was used with the first-round pick they got in the Alex DeBrincat deal. You can see with Seattle this year in 49 games offensively, he's been dynamic. 8 goals, 57 assists, 65 points. In the World Juniors, wasn't really used too much as maybe a 6'7" defenseman at most in the ice time, but still got 4 points in 7 games played. And in the minutes he did play, he looked like Kevin Korchinski. He moves the puck absolutely brilliantly, and the way he's able to process the passing, he finds open lanes with such ease. And to me, as a power play, maybe third, second defenseman in the NHL, I could absolutely see him turning into that. But next up, let's start the number 20 spot in the top 20 here with a player that's had one of the biggest offensive jumps you could possibly ask for. Next up in St. Louis Blues prospect, I got Jimmy Snuggerud. 6'2", 187 pounds, 23rd overall by the Blues in 2022. I thought that was a solid pick at the time. And back in his draft year, I love the defensive blueprint he had, the way he was able to survey his opposition, the way he was able to intercept passes, get in the right lanes for everything, and really create havoc in the defensive zone. He was perfect in that, and I liked his shot blueprint as well, but I just didn't know how much of an offensive ceiling there would be. I thought he would be like a perfect third line, second line defensive player, but what he's done in Minnesota and in the World Juniors has been exceptional to see. He's got 48 points in 35 games in Minnesota and was brilliant in the World Juniors as well. But that step in his shot and that confidence especially, he's seemingly always had the talent, but that confidence has been a slow roll until this season where it's completely burst onto the scene. But now let's go on to another big prospect in the Central Division, this time with the Nashville Predators though, and Yaroslav Askarov, who at 20 years old is going to be turning 21 in June, which is crazy to think that he's still this young. But 6'4", 179 pounds, this is a goalie who was drafted 11th overall in 2020, and you can see just solid progression since then. In 2022, he played in the multitude of different leagues, and in 2023, he's taken that full jump to North America in the AHL, and has played pretty fantastically. With Milwaukee in 38 games, has a 2.62 goals against average and a 911 save percentage, has been really solid in his role as a starter there. And I think in the NHL, even though it might be a little bit of a bumpy ride, especially considering there might not be too many games with UC Saros there, I do think if he is given the chance to be a starter, he'll be excellent for Nashville in very little time. Now let's move on to 18, and I have Marco Kasper of the Detroit Red Wings. At 8th overall, I still think it's a little bit much for him, but I can see still why the Red Wings did it. They had a big need organizationally at center. I think Marco Kasper as a pretty solid second-line center, maybe perfect third-line center. I can absolutely see him being that. This year in the SHL in 52 games, he has 8 goals, 15 assists for 23 points, and the intensity, the motor, the physical work ethic is all at such a high level, but that offensive game has truly taken a step. The passing game that he's gotten, and especially this year, has been way better. The way he's able to feed opponents and be a little more patient with the puck has really made him excel this year. And I think Kasper eventually will be a big part of that Red Wings core. Next up at number 17, let's go on to another prospect that was maybe drafted a little bit high for my liking, but I can still see why they did it. Next up, let's go on to the Philadelphia Flyers with Cutter Gauthier, 5th overall in 2022, and he's had a great season with Boston College, 37 points in 32 games and 10 points in the World Juniors. Doesn't strike you with those NCAA stats as much as maybe a Snuggerud does, but in Boston College, Cutter Gauthier has way less options than Minnesota does on both the forward and defense group offensively. But I think he was really carrying Boston College in a lot of ways. But that Swiss Army knife game is just really excellent. He does a lot of the right things. And even though I don't think he has maybe as much potential as a Matthew Boldy, he's kind of up that same alley in what he can provide for your team. Now let's go on to another big-time NCAA player. So many different guys on this list, but a guy that has risen so much over this past year, and you absolutely love to see it. Next up at number 16, I got Lane Hutson of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, there is the case to be made that maybe he is supposed to be higher, but I think this is a pretty solid spot for him. An absolute steal, 62nd overall. We can all agree on that. And what he's done with Boston University this year, it has been prolific. In 34 games, 12 goals, 32 assists, 44 points, and doing what he does best. That puck moving ability is just supreme. One of the best among any NHL prospect right now. The way he's able to read the ice, counteract different opponents, and really dangle his way out of pressure is just astounding. And that added height, now 5'10", and even though I think there is still a lot to go with his physical pressure and the way he's able to work around forecheckers in his own zone, that is a problem right now. Offensively, almost no complaints. Speaking of offensively, almost no complaints. At number 15, let's move on to the Arizona Coyotes. Not their top 4 prospect, but one of their top 4 prospects in Dylan Guenther, who is just on the edge of being a prospect for me. A lot of guys over 35 games played or graduated, so that's why Yuri Slavkovsky isn't on this list, for example, but he's just under that. Still 19 years old, which is crazy to think about. 9th overall in the 2021 draft. And you can see he's played in a multitude of leagues over these past few years, playing the World Juniors, the WHL, the NHL. You can see he's got 20 points in 15 WHL games this year and 15 points in 33 NHL games this year. But to me, that shot, that power play ability, the way he's able to work off and really create space for himself, that is huge. And with how good that shot is and how much he uses it, that's extremely important. But I think in that next level, alongside a player like Logan Cooley, that type of shot is going to make waves. Now let's keep with the trend of WHL players. At number 14, next up, I'm going to go with Matthew Savoie, who was drafted 9th overall by the Sabres in 2022, 5'9", 179 pounds. And you can see this year at the Winnipeg Ice in 58 games, he has 35 goals, 52 assists for 87 points. But to me, with Winnipeg, he's been easily their best player and continues to be their best player in a lot of different ways. But the way he's able to play make, the way he's able to find his teammates, especially right on the tape of the stick, it's all at a great level, and that shot has continued to get better and better over these seasons, which I think has added a different element to his game that we haven't quite seen. But the defensive part of his game is also extremely underrated, and to me, as just this great playmaking power play player who brings great pace at the next level, I think the Sabres are going to have so many guys already, but they'll continue to add with players like Savoie. Next up at number 13, I'm going to move on to the Winnipeg Jets and their 30th overall pick in 2022 in Brad Lambert, who this year has had a topsy-turvy ride. He's playing the AHL, the WHL, the World Juniors. He's played great for Seattle so far, and my read on Lambert is pretty much the exact same. His speed, his skating is among the best in the entire world right now, prospect-wise, and the way he's able to get separation and be able to use his skating is just supreme. The rest of the game is a work in progress, and I think the skill and using that talent more is also a work in progress. But I think once he finds that extra gear and is able to work off his teammates a little bit better, that's where we'll see him really dominate at the NHL level. Now going on to number 12, a player kind of like Brad Lambert in some ways, in William Eklund of the San Jose Sharks. 7th overall in 2021, and he's still working his way through things, but has been dominant for the San Jose Barracuda this year. 41 points in 52 games in the AHL. And the NHL, offensively, he's looked solid, gotten points so far, and has looked a little bit at home, which you want to see for a 20-year-old. But he's a player that just brings great pace and a great read of the game offensively. He's a player that can work on the power play and even strength. But he's the type of guy that has been getting better with that shot, getting better with that playmaking, and that dual threat offense will be a huge thing going forward with San Jose. Next up, let's go into number 11 and go into the player that just missed the top 10, but honestly, these next 5 guys are practically tied for me. Next up, I'm going to go to the LA Kings in Brant Clark, who has done some marvelous things in the OHL this year with Barrie in 27 games, has 16 goals, 32 assists, 48 points. Offensively, he's kind of like Lane Hudson in a way, where the way he's able to pass, the way he's able to work in the offensive zone is simply supreme. I have still some problems with the way he handles physical pressure and the way he's a little bit too aggressive for his own good defensively, which can cause some massive mistakes. And even though there is still a lot to learn, I do still love the blueprint here of Brant Clark, and as a power play defenseman in the next level, I think he'll be great at that. Now let's get started with the top 10 here and go on to one of my favorite prospects in the entire league. You guys know it already. Logan Stankoven, my boy, 47th overall by the Stars back in 2021. And you can see just the absolute destruction he's put in the WHL this past couple of years. 104 points in 59 games last year and 90 points so far in 43 games this year. The motor, the spirit, the way he plays the game is just all so much fun. But the way he's able to work off his opponents and get under your skin and do so many different things all at the same time while providing great defensive effort, Logan Stankoven is the friggin' man, and he's proving it time and time again. Next up, though, let's go on to his teammate here with the Kamloops Blazers here. At number 9, I got Olin Zellweger, who for the Anaheim Ducks is another good steal in the 2021 draft. 34th overall, 5'10", 174 pounds. You can also see what he's doing in the WHL, especially with Kamloops. He's gotten to that extra gear. In 25 games, he has 18 goals, 26 assists, 44 points. He's been unbelievable. That shot has truly taken that next level, but the way he's able to use his speed, use his quickness with his decision making, it's all at such a high level, and that brain is all at such a high level, and that's where he really does shine. In Anaheim, though, as a first line or first pairing power play guy, he's gonna be an absolute machine. Next up at number 8, let's go on to his future teammate here with the Anaheim Ducks in Pavel Mintyukov, who the Ducks drafted 10th overall in 2022. And I like Mintyukov just slightly better, mostly for some overall game differences, mostly because of the height, but also just the defensive pressure that he can provide in his own zone that Zellweger doesn't quite have, I don't think. You can see this year, even though the numbers don't pop as much, he was great with Saginaw and still pretty solid for Ottawa, even if those points haven't quite come. But the deceptiveness is really the name of the game when it comes to Mintyukov. The way he's able to rush up his own zone, the way he's able to get around opponents, weave through any pressure and get in the offensive zone cleanly is just marvelous to watch. but he's a player that doesn't just bring that offense. I think that improving defensive game is going to be huge for him going forward. Even though he won't be a defensive dynamo, I still think for Anaheim, he'll be a really important piece on that D-core. Now, speaking of really important defensive pieces, next up, let's go on to the Detroit Red Wings, go on to their top prospect here in Simone Edmondson. 6th overall by them in the 2021 draft. He's just continued to improve and improve. In his draft year, I had some massive concerns with some of the decision-making. That was improved right after his draft. And there started to be some concerns maybe with the offensive game, but he's started to get even better with that and more confident. You can see in the AHL at 20 years old, he's got 27 points, 50 games as an AHL D-man, and that's coming from a great season in the SHL. But the defensive instincts, the physical play, the skating, it's all at an elite level. And I think for Detroit, especially with their defense needing as much bigger defensive guys as possible, Edvinsson will definitely fit the bill. Now let's go to the D-man that's also just outside the top 5 here. Next up, I have the New Jersey Devils in Luke Hughes, 4th overall in 2021. And to me, there are some obvious woes when it comes to Hughes' game. Some of the decision-making in the defensive zone, some of that aggressiveness, kind of like Brant Clark, can really burn him at times. But that offensive brain that he has can be marvelous sometimes. And the way he's able to get out of pressure in the offensive zone is spectacular. And that aggressiveness has also led to a lot of great chances for his team. You can see with Michigan this year in 35 games, he has 9 goals, 33 assists, 42 points, was excellent at points for the US and the World Juniors. Defensively, there's going to be still a lot to work with, but the blueprint offensively is sky high. But next up, let's start with the top 5 here and go on to maybe one of the most underrated prospects in the NHL right now. Next up, I have Jesper Wallstead of the Minnesota Wild. 20th overall in the 2021 draft, and I should have said, and I said at the time, and I continue to say that he should have gone way higher than he did. But 6'3", 214 pounds, the stats don't quite pop out as this elite goaltender. 909 save percentage in 31 games, but it's the way he's able to command things, the poise. That's the biggest thing with Wallstedt. The poise that he has, the way he's able to not back down from any fight is really one of the most important parts of his game. He doesn't get flustered. He continues to do what he does best, but the positioning and the firmness in his game and the IQ in net is just all at a sky high level, and the talent level is just fantastic. And I think he'll be one of the best goalies in the league someday, and probably just a few short years. But now let's go on to number 4, and next up, let's go on to another New Jersey prospect in Simone Nemec, another one on the defensive side of things. 2nd overall by New Jersey in 2022, and you see he's been playing in the AHL this season. In 51 games with Utica, has 9 goals, 13 assists, 22 points, and I have seen a better defensive game out of him, even though there was a very low floor defensively from in his draft year. That improvement is still very nice to see, but the puck movement and the aggressiveness going out of his zone is just so much fun to watch. And he's a player that can do things you've never seen out of defenseman, do so much creatively. And to me, he's going to be another part of that New Jersey team that is exciting, that is bashful, that is confident and not afraid to take risks. And he's going to be perfect in that puck possession system. But next up, let's go on to number 3, and the Mets and this player are practically tied for me, but I do give the edge to him right now for just how good of a year he is having and how much improvement we've seen out of him in David Jiricek. And the improvement with Jiricek kind of reminds me of what we saw with Edvinsson after his draft year, where there were some mistakes that have since been corrected pretty easily and pretty quickly. With Jiricek, it was mostly the weight and the muscle behind him. He was acting like he was Victor Hedman out there, but he didn't quite have the strength to pull it off completely. But we've seen that vastly improve so far this year. At 6'3", 209 pounds, 6th overall by Columbus. You can see this year the AHL doing astounding things for a friggin' 19-year-old defenseman. 31 points in 40 games and was great and excellent in so many ways, defensively and offensively for the Czechs in the back end. In the World Juniors with 7 points in 7 games. But he's ruthless, he's fearless, the way he's able to hit players, the way he's able to use that slapper, which is marvelous, by the way. There's a lot of great things in Jiricek's game, and as a top pairing defenseman, maybe as a second guy, I could absolutely see him becoming that someday. But all of these guys in this range are so close, and there's so many great examples of that, but no better example of that to me than number 2. Next up, I have Shane Wright of the Seattle Kraken, who goes in at this second place spot. You could have him a little bit lower, and I can absolutely see why. I don't think he's going to be this brilliant, breathtaking player every single game, but it's the little things that I always continue to love with Shane Wright, the way he commands himself defensively, the way he's able to create separation in the power play, the way that he's been countless times just a perfect captain in so many ways. His face of ability keeps getting better, and you can see in the OHL this year, after having a gold medal worthy tournament, for Canada, being the captain there with 7 points in 7 games. You can see in Windsor, he has 27 points in 14 games, leads the entire OHL in points per game right now, which obviously is a lower sample size, obviously, but he's been great there. And I think he'll continue to be great, even if it might not come as soon as we all predicted. But next up, let's go on to number 1, and in my opinion, the best prospect in the NHL right now. And I remember back in the draft in 2022, I had the opinion that I had Shane Wright still number 1, but Logan Cooley was extremely close with that second place spot. And I kind of wish I went ahead and just put Logan Cooley number 1, because that is where I end up today. Logan Cooley, 3rd overall by the Coyotes in 2022. He is as dynamic as you could possibly get. And both in the World Juniors and Minnesota continues to be the best player on the ice every single time he steps out there. With Minnesota, he has 50 points in 34 games. But the way he commands himself with that brilliant edge work, that amazing top-level skating, that puck possession ability, the way he's able to weave around opponents, deceive guys, get around them, shoot in great lanes, pass pucks right to the slot with ease. He's going to be such a dynamic first-line center. And to me, he's the easy choice at number 1. That's going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Comment down below all your thoughts and what you agree and disagree with my top 25 list, and who are your top 25 prospects as well. Click this card for all my hockey prospect content, run one playlist, share the video with all the friends you guys know, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.